بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I hope everybody is doing well, everybody is awake. Ramadan Mubarak. كل عام وأنتم بخير. I hope everybody is surviving the first day of fasting. Mubarak. I see some. Alhamdulillah. This is the first time I come here and it's like extra quiet. That's how I know like everybody's like khalas dead. Alhamdulillah. You'll get used to it inshallah very quickly, bi'idhnillah. So let's just jump right into it. What does it mean to believe in the last day? This is what we discussed last week in the Aqeedah, the belief in the day of judgment, right? Yes, in the back? Okay, so you're right about that, but there's a few things, a few points that we mentioned that come as part of believing in the day of judgment, yes? Uh-huh. Jazakumullah khair. Very good. So alhamdulillah, we mentioned, so you're correct. However, to add on to that, we mentioned that there's also a life in the grave. And there is a bliss or the punishment of the grave. There's the trial of the grave. We also mentioned there's the resurrection. There's the gathering. We have to believe in that as well. And that at some point in the day of judgment, our deeds will be weighed on a scale, on a balance. Okay, some sort of balance. We don't really know what it is, but it's going to be used to weigh our deeds, and that there's Jannah and Jahannam. What is the benefit of believing in the last day? Wake up, wake up. Yes. So that's one of the benefits. Very good. We mentioned that, of course, whenever a person reads about the day of judgment, or even the verses in the Quran or the Hadith about the day of judgment, more than often they tend to frighten us, to scare us. And that's the point. Now you're worried about this day that's going to come where you're going to stand in front of Allah. How are you going to be? Are you going to be, is this day going to be an easy day for you? Or are you going to be of the people who are witnessing the horrors of the day of judgment? So that's something that motivates us to stop sinning, right? To stop sinning and to rather obey the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, we get to understand here the justice of Allah Azza wa Jal. We mentioned that in this world, there is no such thing as complete justice. You will find some people who are born into crazy rich families, oppressive families. They steal and they kill and they do this and that, and they get away with it, and nobody stops them. They live a very very good life, and they die of old age. Okay, so where's the justice? There is no justice in this world. So the ultimate justice shall be delivered on the day of judgment, and this is one of the benefits. And also, at the end of the day, it's a source of comfort for us when it comes to times of difficulty. In times of difficulty, we might be like stressed out in this world. Maybe you're struggling with money or family or whatever it is. But then remember that this difficulty that I'm going through right now, inshallah, this will be a source of ease for me on the day of judgment. That because of the struggle that I'm going through right now, I will not go through a struggle on the day of judgment. What is the virtue slash benefits of gaining Islamic knowledge? So we were talking about the hadith from last week, if you recall. Yes? Very good, very good. So that's one of the benefits. But overall, just in general, even if you don't teach it, when someone who has knowledge, yeah? Inshallah. So yeah, this is one of the things. So first of all, you're learning how to practice your religion correctly, right? You're getting at least a bare minimum Islamic knowledge. You know how to pray. You know what are your duties towards Allah Azza wa Jal. You know what are your duties towards parents. What are your duties towards other Muslims and other non-Muslims as well. So knowing that will at least ensure that you know what you need to do, what's expected of you, right? And then overall, someone who has more knowledge about the religion is going to have be someone who is more mindful of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because in whatever situation they find themselves in, they will always find themselves remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. We mentioned also there are certain verses of the Quran where Allah Azza wa Jal raises and honors the people of knowledge, And of course, we're talking about here Islamic knowledge specifically, right? And also, we mentioned the hadith that whomever takes a path to obtain knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal shall make the path to Jannah easy for him. So there are so many benefits of gaining Islamic knowledge, and this is, of course, the reason why we are all gathered here today. Next question: why is gaining Islamic knowledge better than performing voluntary deeds? Yes, over there in the back. Uh huh. Very good. So it's kind of what even our friend here in the front answered. It's a form of continuous charity. As our friend explained, you can pass it down. You can teach it to other people. And I gave the example last week. Imagine the only thing you know in Islam is Surah Al-Fatiha. And so you find someone who doesn't know Surah Al-Fatiha and you teach them Surah Al-Fatiha. So now every time this person recites Surah Al-Fatiha in the Salah, you are getting the ajr. Now that person teaches Surah Al-Fatiha to 5 other people, you're getting the ajr for all of these people. And if they teach it to 10 other people, and so on and so forth. So you would reap a crazy amount of reward. Whereas voluntary deeds, and alhamdulillah, voluntary deeds is one of the best things that you can do. We are going to be talking about them today, inshallah. However, you do the voluntary deeds and they end at that. So, for example, last week, pretty much all of us over here, we went to some place to pray Taraweeh, right? Taraweeh, it's not a fard, it's not an obligatory prayer, it's a voluntary prayer. And it's a good thing. It's a form of Qiyamul Layl. It has tons and tons of rewards. However, khalas, as soon as the prayer is done, the deed is done. Okay? There's no continuous Taraweeh, good deeds, right? Khalas, Taraweeh is done, the deed is done. Knowledge is different. Knowledge can continue rolling on and on and on and on, potentially infinitely. Okay? So, a person who was in the middle of prayer broke his wudu, what should he do? Yes, in the back. Exactly. Exit the prayer immediately. Okay? You don't even need to do salam alaikum salam. Some people do that. You don't do that. Khalas, the prayer is over. As soon as you broke your wudu, no matter whether regardless of whether you are in praying individually, even if you're praying in a jama'ah, even if you are the imam, no matter who you are, as soon as the wudu is broken, the salah is broken, you have to go renew your wudu. And there's nothing embarrassing about it. Okay? So even if someone, for example, in Taraweeh prayer, masjid is jam packed, and they end up breaking their wudu, you break your salah. And you turn back, you go literally through all of the rows, all the way to the back, come downstairs, and you perform wudu again. And then same thing, by the way, for the imam. I mentioned this last week. If the imam leading 1,000 people behind him breaks his wudu, he will nominate another imam. He will usually either take someone from behind him from the huffaz or something, and he would drag him and he would make him stand where the imam was standing, and then he would just walk out. He would leave, and then the other person should hopefully not get confused what's going on. He should just know okay, something happened with the imam. He has to go, and I have to continue on. Okay, so basically, renew the wudu, then restart the prayer. A person was praying, not prayer. When a man was about to walk into his area of prayer, what should that person do? Adam, stop him. Put your arm up and don't let that person walk in front of you. Okay? And we mentioned that this is like it's not even like being shy or let me just go lightly. No, 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 no. This is your area of prayer. This is now between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. Nobody has the right to walk here. So you have to put your hand up, put your hand out, and not let someone walk into your area of prayer. Now, of course, as we mentioned before, be wise as you are doing it. Okay, like don't end someone's life when you're doing it. Okay, a kid is running at 200 kilometers per hour. You don't put your hands out and end his life right then and there. Okay, so just be mindful. Okay. What are some of the manners that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught the Muslims? So we mentioned this in the Seerah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Helping other people. Okay. Very good. Okay, so we mentioned many of the famous hadith that we know of. Actually, this is when they are coming in early Medina. So, for example, no, none of you shall believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. It's a very, very famous hadith. This is something that Prophet ﷺ taught it in early Medina. Afshu salama baynakum, spread the greetings of salam. Say salamu alaykum wa alaykum salam to one another. Uh, Encouraging generosity and sadaqah and feeding one another and putting and donating and clothing one another, right? And the rewards of that as well. Helping each other out in times of difficulty and not having hatred or bughd or hasad or jealousy or envy or any of this kind of these diseases towards anybody. These are many of the some of the manners, some of the many manners that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught the Sahaba. Why is Masjid al-Qiblatain called Masjid al-Qiblatain? The boys wanna give that a try? Okay, just go to Manila. Exactly. So Masjid al-Qiblatain is literally called the Masjid of the two Qiblas. Why? And of course, it's to this day in Medina. You can go and visit it and take pictures and whatnot. Why? Because we are told, at least in the books of Seerah, that when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was praying in this masjid, um, the commandment to change the Qibla came down. And so in the middle of the prayer, the same prayer, he switched the Qibla. And so in one prayer, they prayed to two Qiblas. And so it became known as the Masjid of the two Qiblas. Any questions about any of this stuff? Yes? No, you don't need that. If you're praying in a jama'ah, the row in front of you is your sutra. Okay? So, do what, sorry? No. If someone walks in front of your area of prayer, your salah is not invalid. We mentioned last week, it becomes invalid if a adult woman walks in front of you. Okay? But if a kid walks in front of you, it's not good, but your prayer is still valid. Okay? Make sense? Any other questions? Okay. So we get to the sixth and the last pillar of Iman, and that is al-imanu bil-qada'i wal-qadar. Believing in something called al-qada' and something called al-qadar. So as usual, we need to define things. What is qada' and what is qadar? In Arabic, qada', okay, comes from a verb called qada, okay, which is a word that comes frequently in the Quran, okay. Qada means that a person finishes something, okay, or concludes something. So, for example, in Arabic, we say that the judge is called al-qadi because he's the one khalas who puts the final word in the courtroom. He has the final say. For example, when the word in the Quran, whenever Allah uses the word qada, or someone says qada, something qada, فوكزه موسى فقضى عليه. Musa pushed the man, he finished him off. He finished him. So this is what the word qada means, the verb qada. Qada is, the action of finishing or concluding something. Okay? Al-qadr, okay? Qadr means a specific measurement or amount. Okay? So for example, if you see maybe now in Ramadan, your mothers are in the kitchen and they are preparing the food and they know, okay, I need to put, I don't know, 2 tablespoons of sugar in this one thing that your mom is cooking or is baking or whatever. Okay? So 2 tablespoons of sugar. So your mom takes the spoon and she measures 2 tablespoons. This is called qadr, taqdeer. She's being very precise in the amount that's entering into the pot. Okay? So this is called qadr. So the knowledge of the amount of something, whether it is its size or its weight or its dimensions, any of this stuff, this is all called qadr. in Arabic. This is the Arabic dictionary definition. Now, of course, when we talk about it from the Islamic context, it has a similar-ish kind of meaning, okay? Al-qada is referring to the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the same thing is Allah Azza wa Jal is writing something is being written by the command of Allah Azza wa Jal, okay? And that's it. Whatever is written, that is the final say. That is what shall actually happen. That is why it's called al-qada. So the action of decreeing something is called al-qada. Al-qadar is the details of what is it that got decreed. Okay? So the details is within the qadar. How will it take place? Where will it take place? When will it take place? Okay? But al-qada is Allah Azza wa Jal says, or commands, this person, for example, shall die next Friday. This is qada, khalas. Qadar is, okay, this person shall die in a car accident at 4:53 p.m. in such a location in such a street. Okay? So this is what al-qada and al-qadar is. Now, of course, when we go into matters of al-qada and al-qadar, this is one of the big unseen knowledge. We don't really know much about qada and qadar. We believe in it, but we really don't know much about it. And you will find, or you will hear sometimes many scholars or teachers or people just debating and saying, oh, how is qadar actually revealed? How does it actually come down? How does it delivered? How is this? How is that? It's safest. Remember how we spoke about Tawheed al-Asma'i wa Sifat, the names and the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal? These are things that are beyond our knowledge. And certain things that we will never ever know the answer to, except whatever Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran or whatever Prophet Muhammad told us in the authentic Hadith. Other than that, we have zero information about it. Therefore, we do not get ourselves into discussions about these things. This is the safest path to take, the safest action. That don't get yourselves into discussions about how is qadar and the types of qadar and qadar this and qadar that, and Allah degrades that way, and then an angel comes that way, and then this is something beyond our knowledge. Okay, so we only stick to the facts that we are given in the Quran and the Sunnah, and we say at the end of the day, whether I understand it or not, I believe in something called al-qada and al-qadar. So, similar to all the other pillars of Iman, a person's faith is not valid unless they are a believer in Allah's divine decree. Because we have so many verses in the Quran that indicate this. For example, Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah Al-Ahzab, وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قَدَرًا مَقْدُورًا. The command of Allah is something, it's a decreed destiny. قَدَرًا مَقْدُورًا. In another verse in Surah Al-Qamar, إِنَّا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدَرٍ. Everything we've created in this universe was predestined. We wrote it. We wrote the destiny for it. We wrote the qadr for it. In Surah Al-Anfal, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, لِيَقْضِيَ اللَّهُ أَمْرًا كَانَ مَفْعُولًا. So that Allah Azza wa Jal accomplishes a matter that was already decreed. Okay? So all of these verses are in the Quran which prove to us that there is something called qadr. And we have to be believers in qadr. In a hadith, Prophet Muhammad tells us, a famous hadith, مَا أَصَابَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَكَ. Whatever happens to you was meant for you. It was never going to miss you. And whatever missed you was never going to hit you in the first place. So don't think basically, and we're going to mention this in the future slides, but don't think basically that if something bad happened to you, that if only I did this or that, it could have changed. This was the qadr of Allah. You cannot run away from it. Or if you were, someone got a job, okay, you were applying for a job, and your friend applied for the same job, your friend got the job, you didn't get the job. And you're like, why is this, why is that? This is the qadr of Allah. It was written for him, it was not written for you. Whatever was meant for you shall never miss you. And whatever was never meant for you shall never hit you. This is, again, a concept found in al-qada and al-qadr. So, And by the way, even the Arabs in Jahiliyyah, I'll take some questions in a second. Even the Arabs in Jahiliyyah, they acknowledged something called qadar, even pre-Islam. They understood that there is a will that is beyond their own control. It's beyond their own control. That they would write poetry. So it's like I found some poetry. Like, so, for example, the poet would say, this is just a translation. He would say, "How could I escape my death if my Lord has already decreed it from the heavens?" And this is a Jahili poet. So even pre-Islam, the people living in the age of Jahiliyyah, they understood that there is a will or a force or whatever you want to call it beyond their own control. And it was going to happen to them whether they like it or not. This is, in Islam, of course, what we refer to as al-qada and al-qadar. So what is it? What are the components of believing in al-qada and al-qadar? And al-qada and al-qadar. First of all, it involves believing that Allah Azza wa Jal has the knowledge of everything. Allah Azza wa Jal refers to Himself in the Quran, هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة. He is the one who has full knowledge of everything. In the unit of the attributes, we mentioned Allah is Al-Khabir, Allah is Al-Basir, Allah is Al-Alim. These are all attributes that imply knowledge, that Allah Azza wa Jal knows everything. And so, believing in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, not even logically speaking, it means that Allah Azza wa Jal knows everything. It knows everything before you even got created. Allah knew what was going to happen to you before you even got created. And Allah knew everything that was going to happen in this world, all the actions that you would take, and Allah already knew who was going to enter into Jannah and Jahannam. Allah knew everything before creation even existed. And this is why, and this is actually, brings us to actually the second point, that everything that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed, we believe it is written in a record that is called Al-Lawh Al-Mahfuz. And this is, of course, something that we find in Surah Al-Buruj. بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ. What is this Lawh Al-Mahfuz? It's a record that has everything that shall ever happen written in it. So the Quran was revealed from Al-Lawh Al-Mahfuz. But there are many, many other things written in Al-Lawh Al-Mahfuz. Everything related to you and to the entire creation and to the whole universe is written in this Lawh Al-Mahfuz. And the same concept, we find it in Surah Al-Zukhruf as well. And in Surah Al-Ra'd as well, Allah Azza wa Jalla uses the same phrase. And He uses the word Ummil Kitab. In Surah Al-Ra'd He says, وَعِنْدَهُ Ummul Kitab. In Surah Al-Zukhruf, وَإِنَّهُ فِي أُمِّ الْكِتَابِ لَدَيْنَا. Ummul Kitab. What is Ummul Kitab? Literally translates to the mother of all books. So Allah Azza wa Jal has some sort of record or a book that nobody knows about, of course. It is called Ummul Kitab / Al-Lawh Al-Mahfuz, and it has everything written in it. So this is what we, of course, believe as part of the Iman bil-Qada wal-Qadar. Allah Azza wa Jal also says in the Quran, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ فِي كِتَابٍ. Don't you know that Allah Azza wa Jal knows everything in the heavens and the earth? And all of that information is written in a book. Once again, Al-Lawh Al-Mahfuz. The third point here is believing that everything happens by the will of Allah, by the qudra of Allah, by the qada of Allah. Whenever Allah wills something to happen, it shall happen. And Allah says, it mentions it several times in the Quran, إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُن. Whenever Allah wills for something to happen, He simply tells it, kun, be, and it shall be. Now, of course, here is where it gets to it's not really a confusing concept, but some people, or some Islamophobes even, they challenge this notion as well. And they're like, oh, so you are saying that Allah Azza wa Jal is in control of everything. And His will is what happens, and He wills for everything to happen. Does that mean that we don't have free will? So it's a valid question. They're asking, okay, you're saying everything, Allah knows everything you're going to do, everything that you're going to say, everything you're going to act. Allah knows where you're going to be a good person or a bad person. Allah knows who's going to enter into Jahannam and Jannah. So does that mean that you don't have free will? And the answer to this is you do have free will. But that will, okay, and this is where you need to focus. Our free will is within the limits of the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. What do I mean by this? So, for example, right now, if you feel tired from sitting down, when you want to stand up, can you stand up? Yeah? Okay. When we want to go to pray, can you decide that you don't want to pray? And you can also decide that you want to pray. When today in iftar, right, tonight, you're going to decide what you want to start with, right? Okay, I want to eat that food or I'm going to eat this food. You're not going to like start reaching out to one food and then your hand just, a strange, mysterious force pulls your hand another way and you're like, all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I'm grabbing this food. What's happened? I cannot control myself. Where's my free will? Right? Does that ever happen to anyone? Right? So therefore, we get to see that there is something called a free will. In Surah Al-Takwir, Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّ هَذِهِ sorry, not Surah Al-Takwir. I'll figure it out later. إِنَّ هَذِهِ تَذْكِرَةٌ فَمَنْ شَاءَ اتَّخَذَ إِلَى رَبِّهِ سَبِيلًا. That's actually in several surahs, in Surah Al-Muzammil and whatnot. إِنَّ هَذِهِ تَذْكِرَةٌ فَمَنْ شَاءَ اتَّخَذَ إِلَى رَبِّهِ سَبِيلًا. Whoever wants, whoever wills, this is what it says, whoever wills, he shall take basically the steps to stay on the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. So what does that verse indicate? That if a person wants, he can choose to be on the path, on the straight path. And if a person wants, he can also not be on the righteous path. In a different surah after this verse, in Surah Al-Insan actually, then Allah Azza wa Jal says, and that explains it all, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ, and you shall not be able, you won't be able to do anything unless Allah Azza wa Jal wills it to happen. So, what does that all mean? How do I combine between these two things? I have the freedom of will to do any actions that I want within the boundaries of the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. So, for example, let's say Allah Azza wa Jal has willed for a person to die. I don't know. I'm just thinking of examples of people dying. Okay, I'm feeling that kind of way today, you know? So, Allah Azza wa Jal has willed for a person to die on a Friday. Okay? Now, obviously, this person doesn't know he's going to die. He has the freedom of will. He can choose to go and book an air ticket and travel on an airplane. He can go and take the sea train. He can go and take the car. He can go and sleep in his house. That's all part of his will. But he cannot escape the ultimate will of Allah that he's going to die on that day. He has the free will to go do whatever he wants, but at the end of the day, Allah Azza wa Jalla, whatever He says is going to happen, is going to happen. Whether you're in an airplane, whether you are in a car, whether you are sleeping, whether you're in a train, whether you are wherever you are. Whatever Allah Azza wa Jalla wills, that is what shall happen. Does that sort of kind of make sense? I'll take questions in a second. I know you just hold that question, inshallah. Okay? So the third component is the component of will, and the last component, of course, is the component of creation. Okay? To believe that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one creator who has control over everything. And of course, this should already make sense to us based on what we have already covered in the Tawheed. Given that Allah Azza wa Jalla has the power to decree everything and whatever He says happens, that clearly indicates that He has ultimate control over all of His creation. And that there is no other God with Him. Astaghfirullah. Right? La ilaha illallah. So it is only Allah Azza wa Jalla who has complete control. Now, what do we benefit from the belief in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jalla? Well, logically speaking, if I know that everything in my life shall happen based on the will of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and that nobody else shall be able to help me against the will of Allah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, Prophet Muhammad says in the Hadith that if all of humanity were to gather together to harm someone, all of humanity gathered against one person to harm him, they will not be able to harm him unless Allah Azza wa Jalla wills it. And if all of humanity go to benefit someone, they will never be able to benefit him unless Allah Azza wa Jalla wills it. And so that shows us that the ultimate control is in Allah Azza wa Jalla. So with that knowledge, why would I ever rely on anything other than Allah? If Allah has the ultimate power, if a person is sick and all the doctors in the world gather together to heal this person, if Allah wills for that person not to be healed, this person will not be cured. No matter who you bring, no matter what doctor you bring in the world. So why would I now put my reliance on the doctor? Why should I not put my reliance on Allah Azza wa Jalla, who has the ultimate power? So someone who has faith and iman in al-qadr shall automatically put his trust always at all time upon Allah Azza wa Jalla and upon nobody else, and no object or no person and nothing. You only put your tawakkul on Allah Azza wa Jalla. And you understand, even when you are taking your medicine, for example, you're feeling sick, you took your medicine, you're not relying on this medicine to heal you. You're relying on Allah Azza wa Jal to cure you. But this medicine is simply a way for you, a way in which Allah Azza wa Jal delivers His cure to you. So this is a very important aspect of believing in Qadr. And also, such a person will understand anything that you're enjoying in this world. You know, you are, a person might grow up to become a multimillionaire, or own several businesses, or own several cars, or maybe you're just really good at a certain sport, or at a really good in a certain subject. You're a genius in a certain aspect. This is not because of you. This is because Allah willed it to happen. And so you do not get yourself into this trap, and I believe we mentioned this in the past, the trap where you are admiring yourself and you're saying, oh, I am so smart, I'm so intelligent, I am so good at this and that. It's because of my abilities, it's because of my hard work and my efforts. You are nothing. You are nothing. It's Allah Azza wa Jal who blessed you with all of these abilities, with this talent, with this intelligence. And had Allah not willed it, you would not have had it. And so when you understand that it is all under the control of Allah Azza wa Jal, you will once again appreciate Allah Azza wa Jal, and you will not find yourself in this spiral of arrogance. So one of the cures to arrogance is to actually believe in the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal, and to believe that nothing is happening to me, good or bad, except by Allah's Azza wa Jal's decree. And on the other side as well, when something negative happens, someone a loved person, a loved relative passes away, or you're afflicted with a certain disaster or calamity, whatever it is, something bad happens to you, you don't start complaining. And this is an important here, by the way. Everything happens by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal as a form of a test to us. When something negative happens, you do not ever complain and you say, why, oh Allah, you did this to me? Why, oh Allah, I'm praying so much, I'm giving sadaqah, I'm being a good Muslim, why, oh Allah, would you do this to me? This is kufr. This is now disbelieving in Allah Azza wa Jal. Because now you are basically saying, oh Allah, I know better than you, so why are you doing this to me? I know that shouldn't have happened and the other thing should have happened. Astaghfirullah, right? So nobody should ever complain about the decree of Allah. You can complain to Allah, you can raise your hands to Allah Azza wa Jal and say, oh Allah, I'm really short on money and I need more money. Oh Allah Azza wa Jal, grant me more money. Oh Allah Azza wa Jal, cure me of this disease. Whatever it is. So you can complain to Allah. And so a person, once again, who believes in the qada and qadar of Allah Azza wa Jal, they shall have a peace of mind that no matter what happened, no matter how negative, they will always say, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ, that this was out of my control. I did everything to prevent it, but Allah Azza wa Jal had a different plan. And so you move on in your life. So this is the concept of al-qada and al-qadr in a nutshell. So now I'll open the floor for questions. Yes? Very good question. Very good question. And the Sahaba asked actually the exact same question to the Prophet ﷺ. And they said, if everything is already written, because the hadith basically goes that every single one of you already has his spot in Jannah decreed for him and his spot in Jahannam decreed for him. So the Sahaba asked that question. They were like, okay, should we try? Like, what's the point then? So the Prophet ﷺ says, rather, i'malu. Rather, you should put in your work. You should put in the effort. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal is. This is knowledge for Allah. This is not knowledge for me. I don't know. How do I know right now if my spot is in Jannah or a spot in Jahannam? How do I know what actions I'm going to do in the future? I don't know. What I know is what Allah Azza wa Jal has given me right now with my limited knowledge. Allah has given me a brain. And Allah Azza wa Jal has given me a certain, to a certain extent, the freedom of will. I have the ability to choose to do certain decisions in my life. I have the ability to grab the Quran and read the Quran and understand the Quran, and I have the ability to choose to act upon the Quran or not to act upon the Quran. This is now my own choices being made. So don't overthink it. Again, this is why I said it's one of these ghaib knowledge. It's really, it's part of the unseen knowledge that we'll never understand. And the more you think about it, the more confused you will get. So khalas, just all is to put it very, very simply. Allah Azza wa Jal knows what we're going to do, yes, okay? But I don't know what Allah Azza wa Jal knows. And I don't know Allah's qadr. So I need to put in the effort. Because on the day of judgment, nobody will ever go into Jannah or go into Jahannam and then blame qadr and be like, oh Allah Azza wa Jal, you wrote that for me. You willed that for me, and this is why I'm entering Jahannam right now. No. All the disbelievers shall accept their fate and enter into Jahannam willingly. Because all of their own actions are presented in front of them. And they're like, okay, these are your actions. This is your action. You harmed the person. You stole from that person. You did this. You did that. This is why you're earning Jahannam. No person will ever be thrown into Jahannam or even into Jannah just by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is kind of a lame example, but just to put it into perspective, do you think you can ever walk into a classroom at the first day of school or university or whatever, and then as soon as the teacher sees your face, you're like, fail, khalas, get out of here, right? Like, what did I do? I didn't even do anything. I didn't even start the classroom. Like, what? I didn't even write any tests. They're like, no, I already know you're going to fail. Khalas, get out of here. How would that be fair? This will not be any, that will not be justice, right? But once a student goes through the classroom, okay, they start slacking off, they're not doing their homework, they fail their exams. Now the teacher says, okay, you're fail. Okay? Now the student can't say, oh, I'm failing because you have the power to make me fail and you just wrote me a fail. No, Habibi, you failed because you were just a failure. You just didn't do anything that you were supposed to do to pass. So it's kind of like, obviously, this is two different things, but it's similar in a way. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? Okay. You do, okay, so the general rule is you do everything in your power. Okay? If you did everything in your power and you still did not succeed, then khalas, you say qadar Allah ma sha'a fa'al. But there has to be effort. So and you had to what, sorry? Then this is qadar of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is what the other hadith says. So you do everything in your power. What was it? فإن أصابك شيء فلا تقل لو أني فعلت كذا وكذا. Yes, that hadith. So if something afflicts you after you put all the effort, okay, let's say you wanted to get to a certain university, okay, or you were applying, you wanted to get a certain job, and you tried so hard, okay, you were like, I want to work so hard, you studied so hard, you memorized so many things, you did practice exams, and you even got a decent grade, but you still didn't get admitted into it. And some guy whom you know is worse than you somehow got into the university that you're looking for. At this point, you say, khalas, this is qada and qadar. I did everything in my power. I took the steps that I thought were the correct steps, but Allah Azza wa Jal simply did not will it for me to happen. So khalas, move on. And the reason we say at this point it's qada and qadar is so that I don't start dwelling on the past. I don't start saying, oh, I regret spending so much time studying. I regret taking this choice. I regret listening to such a person. You did these decisions because you thought it was going to be the best for you. So you did everything in your power, but you found that all the doors were shut in front of you. So you say, قدر الله ما شاء فعل. And one example, I'll give you one more example, inshallah. And this is actually from the Seerah. It's kind of jumping the gun a little bit. The Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud, the Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Muslims, they discussed with one another, and they came up with a plan that they genuinely thought was the best plan of action. And that was to go and fight the army of Quraysh outside Medina. And fast forward, a lot of Muslims got killed. Even though they took the effort and they discussed and they literally thought that they were making the correct decisions. So, when we look at the end of the Battle of Uhud, do we ever see the Prophet ﷺ pointing hands and saying, hey, you were the one who suggested that idea. You're a horrible person. We're never going to listen to you again. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, none of that stuff. Why? Because they all understand, okay, khalas. We did everything that we could. We took the steps that we thought was appropriate. And this is how the Battle of Uhud ended up. قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. This was the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. Does that sort of make sense? Okay, questions? No questions? Okay. So last week I shared with you the hadith by Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما منكم من أحد إلا سيكلمه ربه ليس بينه وبينه ترجمان. There is none among you except that Allah Azza wa Jal shall speak to them without any intermediate. There shall be nothing in between you and Allah Azza wa Jal when you speak to Him on the day of judgment. فَيَنْظُرُ عَنْ أَيْمَنَ مِنْهِ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا شَيْئًا قَدَّمَهُ. This person who is meeting Allah Azza wa Jal shall look to his right, and he shall only find his deeds. And he shall look to his left, ثُمَّ يَنْظُرُ عَنْ أَيْسَرَ مِنْهِ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا شَيْئًا قَدَّمَهُ. He shall look to his left, he shall only find his deeds again. Then he shall look in front, ثُمَّ يَنْظُرُ أَمَامَهُ فَتَسْتَقْبِلُهُ النَّارُ. And he shall look in front of him, and he shall see Jahannam. فمن استطاع منكم أن يتقي النار ولو بشق تمرة فليفعل. So whoever can protect himself from the fire of Jahannam, even by half a date, then let him do so. Continue after that now. الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله لا إله إلا الله. So, back to the hadith. I just finished reading the hadith. Anyone want to share their notes about the hadith? Nobody? Yeah? Allah barik. Jazakumullah khair. So yes, we will be talking about the concept of sadaqah in a little bit, inshallah. A little bit about Adi ibn Hatim. He is the son of the famous, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Hatim al-Ta'i. He was very, very, very famous for his generosity and for his and kindness amongst the Arabs in Jahiliyyah. So he is his son. He was actually a Christian first, and then he converted to Islam, and then he lost both of his eyes in battles throughout his life. And yeah, he died towards, obviously after Prophet Muhammad, he died like 60, 70 Hijrah, 66 Hijrah. So this is a little bit about Hatim, Adi ibn Hatim. So, first of all, that hadith teaches us that all of us have a scheduled meeting with Allah Azza wa Jal. And when we say a meeting with Allah Azza wa Jal, we don't mean like a figure of speech or a metaphor or like it's not actually a meeting. No, no, no. It's an actual meeting. And Allah Azza wa Jal shall talk to us and we shall hear Him. Now, how does Allah Azza wa Jal speak? This is, of course, the attribute of speaking. This is Tawheed Asma wa Sifat, the attribute of speaking. So Allah Azza wa Jal speaks, but of course, we say that this is in a matter befitting to Allah Azza wa Jal. We have no clue, nor do we ever try to comment about this. And there will be no intermediate. So it's not like the prophets where Allah Azza wa Jal sends an angel and then an angel comes talk to you and then an angel goes back to Allah. No, 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 no. There's no intermediate. Every single one of us will directly talk to Allah Azza wa Jal, our Creator. And based on how you were in this world, that will determine how that meeting really goes. And in a hadith, it says, whoever looks forward to meeting Allah, Allah looks forward to meeting him. So if you are someone who loves Allah Azza wa Jal and you are looking forward to meet Allah Azza wa Jal, then Allah Azza wa Jal is also looking forward to meeting you. And what's usually the case when you're looking forward to meet someone? It's usually like an exciting meeting. It's a pleasant meeting. It's a fun meeting. It's you're like you're not worried about anything, right? And so if a person is excited to meet Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal is also excited to meet him as well. Now in this meeting, it's a meeting of hisab. This is a reckoning now. But again, depending on a person's state in this dunya, their hisab shall be determined for them. So as for the believers, there's different kinds of hisabs that they can have. There's the hisab that is, well, some people, there's a category of people whom shall not even have a hisab. Like the books are closed, and immediately they're told, khalas bro, and you just go to Jannah immediately. Without, like, this is of course the best of the best. No reckoning, didn't even open their book of sins or their book of bad deeds. Allah Azza wa Jalla, just out of His mercy, He says to them, you can go to Jannah immediately. There are another category of Muslims, and these are, the more sinful ones. And this is in fact a form of a punishment to them, such that they don't have to face any other punishment. And this is of course the minimal kind of punishment that a person can have on the Day of Judgment. And that is that they start getting questioned on every single deed that they did in this world. Everything. So all of their books are open, and line by line, you did this sin. Why did you do this sin? Do you have an excuse? Yes? No? No excuse? Add it to your bad deeds. Next bad deed. One by one, and you're going to go through a book that's like this thick. Okay? Or even more than this. And so this is a form of punishment, because that's going to be a very, 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 very long questioning. But to this believer in Allah Azza wa Jal, that's his punishment. Such that khalas, the hisab is done, he's destined to enter Jannah, he enters Jannah, he's protected from Jahannam. There is another group as well. What group? I forgot. SubhanAllah. There is another group as well. I guess that's for now. That's okay, and for the believers, and even the meeting. It's this was SubhanAllah. Now I remember. There's a different hadith that tells us that to the believer, the Day of Judgment shall last to them as long as it takes you to pray 2 rak'ahs. Do you know how long it takes you to pray your sunnah prayer? Like your mashallah, inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, qul huwallahu ahad, you quick 2 rak'ahs of sunnah. To the believers, that is how long the Day of Judgment shall be for them. That's how they shall experience the Day of Judgment, which tells us that their hisab shall overall be easy. And the Quran tells us, فَسَوْفَ يُحَاسَبُ حِسَابًا يَسِيرًا وَيَنْقَلِبُ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ مَسْرُورًا. He's going to have an easy hisab, an easy questioning, just a quick thing here and there, then out of the way, and then he joins the rest of his family in Jannah. However, on the other hand, you have the disbeliever. And this is actually a topic of dispute amongst scholars. Because some scholars, they tell you that kuffar, they don't even have hisab. Because they don't believe in La ilaha illallah, so they are immediately thrown into Jahannam. Whereas there is another group of scholars that tell you, no, they will have a hisab, and they will have good deeds and bad deeds. Not because they're going to be entered into Jannah with their good deeds, but that shall determine how bad their punishment is going to be. So, like for example, Abu Talib, right? We mentioned about Abu Talib, the uncle of Prophet Muhammad. He was a very, very, very good person. He was the protective uncle of Prophet Muhammad, and as a result of his protectiveness, he will be taken onto the outskirts of Jahannam. But he's still in Jahannam. But it's like the minimal punishment, because he was a really good person. So some scholars, they say that, oh no, if a person is a disbeliever, but they are a good person, then they shall have some good deeds, not because that will enter them into Jannah, but it's because it will make their punishments, it will determine how severe their punishment is. But at the end of the day, the same destination is that they are in Jahannam. And their hisab will be humiliating. And in fact, their hisab will be open to all of mankind. So all of mankind will be lined up on the Day of Judgment. One by one, they are waiting for their turn for hisab. Some people, especially the disbelievers, will have their hisab in public in front of all of humanity. And so their sins will be exposed to all of humanity as a form of humiliation to them. and then they will be thrown into Jahannam. Whereas the believer, they will be concealed. It's a private meeting with Allah Azza wa Jal. And even when a sin is presented to them out of Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy, Allah Azza wa Jal will tell them, I covered you up in this dunya. SubhanAllah. All of us here, we have certain sins that nobody knows about. And you're hiding them. And keep it that way. If you have a sin that you are hiding it, at the very least, don't you ever tell someone that you're doing that sin. You regret that sin, you repent to Allah Azza wa Jal, but you hide that sin from people. Why? So that Allah Azza wa Jal tells you on the day of judgment, I covered that sin for you in the dunya, and I'm going to forgive it to you on the day of judgment. Shafi, please leave the room and don't come back until your dad is here. Go, go, go. Please, quickly. I think I told you before the class that you're only allowed here if your dad is here. So please. Jazakallahu khairan. Goodbye. Anyways. What was I saying? So yes. And then it tells us what's going to happen during this hisab. That a person shall have their good deeds placed to the right. And so they will look to the right and they will see however many good deeds that they have. And then they shall look to the left and will see however many bad deeds that they have. Then they shall look in front of them and they shall see the hellfire. And the hellfire, don't think of the hellfire as a normal fire. It's not just you ignite some fuel and then it lights up a fire. No. The hellfire, it speaks as well. And it's very different than other hellfires as well. For example, وَبُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ لِمَنْ يَرَى. What is it? بُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ لِمَنْ يَرَى. One of the opinions that Jahannam will come out of its way to grab the disbelievers. It's not that they are thrown into the hellfire. Jahannam will come out and chase after them. So it's a fire unlike any other fire that you can ever, and we will never be able to imagine what Jahannam is. And may Allah protect us from Jahannam. But one detail that Allah tells us about Jahannam in the Quran, يَوْمَ نَقُولُ لِجَهَنَّمَ هَلِ امْتَلَأْتِ. We will speak to Jahannam and we will ask it, O Jahannam, are you full? And Jahannam shall respond back and it shall say, هَلْ مِن مَزِيد? Do you have more? I got room. I got more. I can take more and more and more. So Jahannam will be looking forward to taking people in. Jahannam is fueled by people. Just like the fire today is fueled by fuel, the fuel of Jahannam is people. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ. The fuel of Jahannam is mankind. So Jahannam wants to be stronger and stronger. So it goes, give me more and more and more and more. So Jahannam will be waiting for that person who's in the hisab right now. And is waiting for any opportunity. As soon as it gets a signal, it's going to take them and snatch them away. And so, obviously, this is a very scary scene. And nobody wants to be anywhere close into Jahannam. Because even the fumes of Jahannam, we're talking about the hadith, the fumes of Jahannam are harmful. Like, let alone Jahannam itself. The fumes of Jahannam are harmful. Jahannam is so punishing that a sinful person, is simply dipped once into Jahannam. Just dipped, like dipped, like you just in and out. He's dipped into Jahannam and he feels like he has never ever experienced any pleasure ever in his life. Of how severe the punishment of Jahannam is. So the Prophet ﷺ leaves us with the advice: protect yourself from Jahannam. Put a barrier between you and Jahannam. How do you put up that barrier? With the sadaqah. No matter how small or how big it is. It could even be a piece of date. Now, of course, the amount of sadaqah depends on who you are and on your background. Okay, like if you're a millionaire, your sadaqah is not a piece of date, habibi. You're going to be like, oh, okay, it says half a date, I'm going to give half a date, and khalas, I'm a protection of Jahannam. You're a stingy person. You're a millionaire, and you don't even want to give anymore, right? The half a date it's a consolation for a person who's poor. Because a poor person might say, well, okay, I don't have anything to give. How am I supposed to protect myself from Jahannam? So the Prophet ﷺ is telling them, even half of a date. That date that you're eating, take some for yourself, but give some for charity. But for the majority of us here, alhamdulillah, we are not that poor, okay? So donate something else. Donate your money. All of us, we get money for Eid, for example. Our parents, sometimes they give us allowance or money or whatever. Some of us are at that age where we're going to be applying for part-time jobs and we're going to have our own jobs and or our own income or something like that, make sure part of that is dedicated to protect yourself from Jahannam. No matter how small and how large the amount, don't you ever underestimate sadaqah. Don't you ever underestimate sadaqah. And this is why I would advise all of us. And honestly, I wish there were more older people here because I would love to advise us to the older people. Because sometimes when you start to encourage people, one of the, I was talking to some people about Taraweeh, and they were telling me, oh, the reason they don't like to pray Taraweeh in the masjid is because they're always asking for donations. They're always like telling you, always donate. We need the donation for this. We need donation for that. Donation for this. Fundraiser this. Fundraiser that. Ya akhi, we're just fed up. Khalas, just let us pray. You're really underestimating this opportunity to give out. Or they start questioning and they start saying, oh, how do I guarantee that if I give a sadaqah here that they're going to use it for the right thing? How do I know that if I give my sadaqah to the masjid, that the masjid will actually do something useful with it and will not do and they will start giving you names and giving you examples from the past where, money was not being used properly and whatnot? And my answer to this is very simple. Why do you care? Are you giving the sadaqah so you can build your masjid? That sadaqah, before you wanted to build the masjid, your intention should be that this sadaqah should be a protection for me. The sadaqah is for me to please Allah Azza wa Jal. To show Allah Azza wa Jal that here, look, oh Allah, I am giving some of the things that you gave me, that you blessed me with, and I'm giving it for sadaqah. That should be your intention for any sadaqah, before anything else, before any masjid, before any organization, before any board, before any project. The intention is for you and only for you. That this sadaqah shall be a source of benefit for you. So therefore, when someone asks you for sadaqah, no matter, and this is again just my humble advice to you, no matter what their situation is, even if they tell you, oh, I don't have money, and you feel like, oh, but I think that person does have money, don't question it. That person asked you for help. This is Allah Azza wa Jal inviting you to give sadaqah. So give sadaqah. And don't be stingy with your sadaqah. Give in accordance to your own ability. Also, a form of sadaqah that many people underestimate is al-kalima tayyibah. A good word is also a form of charity. And of the mercy of Allah that a good word comes in so many different shapes and forms. The Quran is the best of all speech, and it is a form of a good word. So Quran is a form of sadaqah. Saying Subhanallah, tasbih. Saying Alhamdulillah, tahmeed. Saying Allahu Akbar, takbir. This is all kind of sadaqah. Encouraging others, saying words to other people to encourage them to do good. You go to your friend and tell them, hey bro, come, let's pray Taraweeh tonight together. These words that you just said, these are sadaqah. If you saw someone doing something wrong and you advise them and said, hey, we should not do this is haram. These words that you just said, these are a form of sadaqah. Spreading knowledge. We mentioned knowledge last week. Spreading knowledge is a form of sadaqah. It's a continuous sadaqah even, right? Anything that will make the person in front of you feel good, as long as you're not doing it through the haram, you're just doing it through the permissible means, is a form of good words. So have it a habit. Always say good things to the person in front of you. Okay, you see, the person in front of you, even if you've never seen that person before, you're like, sister, Assalamu alaikum, how are you doing today? Allahumma barak, I love your hijab, it looks so cute. Or you see a brother in the masjid and you say, Assalamu alaikum, brother, Allahumma barak, I love your thawb. You're looking, mashallah, the nur on your face. What are you going to lose when you say, even if this guy that has no nur on his face, you just say it because you're like, you want the ajr. You're going to say it because when you say it, what happens? That person usually smiles. That person usually feels good. He feels happy. You just made that person feel good. That feeling that you put in the heart of this person, even if they are non-Muslim, by the way, you just received ajr for sadaqah. So don't underestimate this tongue of yours. It has the ability to destroy you, and we mentioned that in the past, but it also has the ability to raise you so many ranks just out of being good to other people. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and we'll just conclude with this in the Quran, speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ, that it is out of a mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla that you are lenient towards them, that Allah put that mercy in you. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And if you were, remember he's speaking to the Rasul ﷺ, if you were rough with the Sahaba, you were harsh with them, you used harsh words with them, even the Sahaba would not stick with you. Even the Sahaba would leave you. They would walk away from you. So if this is being said to the Prophet ﷺ, then what about me and you? So let us be careful, and especially now it's the month of Ramadan and we are fasting, and it's all about self-control and self-improvement, right? So let us be mindful of this and only say the words which are pleasing and will make the person in front of us happy, as long as, of course, we are not doing any sort of slandering or gossiping or whatnot, right? Any questions about the stuff? Yes? Sorry? So becoming a person, becoming among those of the people who enter Jannah without hisab, uh, the Quran tells us, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فأولئك يدخلون الجنة يرزقون فيها بغير حساب. So we don't really have a defined criteria, but it has to be obviously a believer, a mu'min, so someone who's reached the level of iman, who has done good in their life. That's the criteria that we are given. And so a person should make dua that, oh Allah Azza wa Jal, make me among those who shall be entered into Jannah without any hisab. Because not everybody will have that privilege. Question? Giving what, sorry? Awesome. Yes, correct. Smile is a sadaqah. There are so many types of sadaqah. Imatatul adha an tariq, whoever removes something harmful from the road. So even if you sometimes like, even by the way, removing something harmful from the road, I gave this example, I remember before, the wudu slippers, right? Sometimes people, they just throw them in the middle of the street, or not the street, the hallway. Or even like the shoes upstairs, sometimes people just scatter them around. People can trip on those. So you taking 2 seconds of your day to take your shoes and put them on the shelf, this is also a form of sadaqah. There are so many, this is the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla, there are so many different types of sadaqah. Yes? You have a question or yeah, what is this? You forgot? Okay, خلاص, خير inshallah. Okay, let's move on to the questions. In Islam, what is the difference between al-qada and al-qadar? Yes, Muhammad. Exactly. So al-qada is the actual command, the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal for something to happen. Al-qadar is the means in which it will take place, the details of how it will actually happen. How does human free will relate to the will of Allah Azza wa Jal? What's the yes? Exactly. Exactly. So every human has free will, but the limit to that free will is the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? So we have a certain range of actions that we can do, but there are certain things, whether you like it or not, they are beyond your control, and only Allah Azza wa Jal can will it. What is al-lawh al-mahfuz? Wake up, boys, wake up. Yes, in the back. So the book that Allah Azza wa Jal has with Him, that has all the decree written in it. Everything that shall happen, past, present, future, everything is written in it. What are some of the benefits of believing in Qadr? In the back. Exactly. Is that so? Like exactly. So peace of mind, right? You did everything that you could in your power. You put in all of the effort, and then it didn't happen the way you wanted it. This is the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal. And also it reminds us that you should purely rely on Allah Azza wa Jal for everything, because only Allah Azza wa Jal has control. And it also serves as a protection from self-admiration, right? You don't start looking to yourself, like you don't start feeling arrogant. Then you're saying, "Oh, I'm so good at this and I'm so good at that." Rather, you realize that Allah Azza wa Jal willed that I have this kind of ability, right? And so it's not from you, it's from Allah Azza wa Jal. According to the hadith, what will a person see to the right and to the left and to the front when they meet Allah Azza wa Jal? Yes. So they will see both the good and the bad deeds, okay, on the left and the right, on the right and the left. And then in front they will see Jahannam. How will the meeting with Allah go for the believers and the disbelievers? Mhm. Exactly. So it will be easy and pleasant for the believers, and it shall be humiliating for the disbelievers. How can a person protect himself from Jahannam? Yes, giving sadaqah, any form of sadaqah, whether it is small or large. Oops. Oh, you guys didn't see that. Give examples of charity other than donating money. Uh, yes. Yeah. Donating clothing. Okay. Donating food. Very good. Or any form of kind word is a form of sadaqah as well. Cool. Questions? Questions? Okay. Moving on. So we finished talking about the sunnahs of salah, the disliked actions in salah, the invalidators of salah, and so now we shall move on to the sunnah prayers, the voluntary prayers. We're going to spend some time talking about them and what are the different sunnah prayers that exist in Islam and how are they done. So, of course, they are called voluntary prayers because obviously they're voluntary, meaning they are not fard, meaning they are not obligatory, meaning if you leave them, then you are not sinful. However, you are encouraged to do them for several reasons, which we shall mention. They are also called several different names. So they are called sunnah. We all know sunnah prayers. They are also called mustahab. They are also called nafil or nawafil in plural. Or they are called tatawwur. Tatawwur. Okay? Because Allah Azza wa Jalla, for example, says in the Quran, فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ. Tatawwur meaning voluntary. Okay? And we, of course, we mentioned before in a previous hadith that a person who is consistent with their voluntary prayers, um, he shall earn the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. ولا يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. That my servant continues to come close to me. How? Through the nawafil, until I love him. And of course, we mentioned before the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, the continuation of the hadith. When I love him, I shall become the eyesight with which he sees, and his hearing with which he hears, and the hand with which he strikes with, and the legs with which he walks with. And if he asks me, I shall grant him. And if he seeks refuge in me, I shall protect him. These are all benefits of earning the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. We mentioned it previously in a hadith. So, of the benefits of voluntary prayers, we are told in the hadith, ما من عبد يسجد لله سجدة, that there is no servant of Allah that does a sujood to Allah Azza wa Jal, except كتب الله له بها حسنة. Allah shall write down for him one good deed. ومحى عنه بها سيئة, and Allah shall erase a bad deed. ورفع الله له بها درجة, and Allah shall raise him a level. So imagine someone who does a lot of sujood. How do you do a lot of sujood? Through the nafil prayers, sunnah prayers. So someone who does a lot of sujood every day will be raised several levels, shall earn several hasanat, shall have several sins erased. Also, of the hadith tells us it's one of the ways to obtain Jannah, because we are told of a servant called Rabi'a ibn Ka'b al-Aslami. He once was at the house of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he was helping him out. He was serving him. He was bringing his water to do wudu, because back in the day they didn't have tap water. So he would have a servant that would go and fill up the bucket with some water, and he would lift it up for the Prophet ﷺ. So one day he did this to the Prophet ﷺ, and so the Prophet ﷺ told him, "Sal, ask me anything that you want." So he's now being literally offered a dua for free from Prophet Muhammad. Ask me anything that you want, and I shall ask Allah for it. And so the first thing that this man says, and he says, أسألك مرافقتك في الجنة. Ya Rasulullah, I'm asking you that I'm asking that I want to be with you in Jannah. SubhanAllah, look at their priorities. Not that I want to be a millionaire, not that I want to be famous, not that I want to be smart, or I want to be good in basketball, or I want to this and that. He wants Jannah. And in fact, Prophet Muhammad then told him, don't you want anything else? I can make dua for you for anything else. And he says, I don't want anything else. That's the only thing that I want. I want to be with you in Jannah. So then he says to him, and he responds, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, فَأَعِنِّي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ بِكَثْرَةِ السُّجُودِ. Then help me fulfill this request for you by increasing your sujood. So he's teaching us, if you want Jannah, sujood. How are you going to do sujood? Obviously, you're not just going to do sujood randomly. You're going to be in salah. How are you going to be doing salah? It's not just the obligatory prayers. You're going to need a lot of voluntary prayers as well. So it is one of the ways to obtain Jannah. Of the benefits of voluntary prayers as well is that it fills in whatever is lacking in your obligatory prayers. It fills in the gap. Because the Prophet ﷺ tells us, speaking about the Day of Judgment, we were just talking about the Day of Judgment, the first thing that a person will be questioned in front of Allah Azza wa Jal is their salah. If the salah is good, then everything is good for them. If the salah is not good, if they basically have no salah at all, that's the end of the hisab. There's no other hisab for them. Khalas. Done. Conclusion. Which is why you need to make sure you're praying your 5 daily prayers. Otherwise, there is no other hisab. That's the first thing that you will be questioned. And that is the salah. Now, if he does have salah, but it is lacking, Allah Azza wa Jal shall say to the angels, انظروا في صلاة عبدي أتمها أم نقصها. Look at his prayer, examine his prayer. وإن كان انتقص منها شيئا قال انظروا هل لعبادي من تطوع. So if his obligatory prayer is lacking, meaning, okay, the salah was there, he prayed Asr, but he wasn't focusing, or he made mistakes in the salah, or he messed something up in the salah and he did not fix it, there was something lacking in his obligatory prayer. Allah Azza wa Jalla shall tell the angels before he decrees whatever, he tells the angel, go and look in his records. Does he have any nawafil? Does he have any tatawwu'? Does he have any voluntary prayers? If so, then he shall say, basically take those voluntary prayers and use them to fill the gaps in the obligatory prayers. So they are literally a form of protection for you on the Day of Judgment. So such that it will look as if you have perfected your obligatory prayers. That's where the voluntary prayers will come in handy. And even it is a protection for your obligatory prayers overall. Because imagine someone, we're going to learn this in the future classes inshallah, but for example, the sunnah for Fajr prayer is 2 sunnahs, 2 rak'ahs before. For Dhuhr prayer is 4 rak'ahs before, 2 rak'ahs after. In the middle, there's the 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr. So imagine someone who has the habit of praying the 4 rak'ahs of sunnah before Dhuhr and 2 rak'ahs of sunnah after Dhuhr. And then one day shaitan gets to his head and he starts getting lazy. Okay, so if he's getting lazy now, do you think he will be lazy to do the nawafil or the fard? The nawafil. The nawafil. So shaitan might come to him and say, hey bro, you gotta do 4 rak'ahs before Dhuhr. Come on, he's not gonna tell him don't pray your fard. He's gonna tell him just don't pray your sunnah. So you're still gonna pray your fard at least on time. Yes, okay, you slacked off in your sunnah, but at least sunnah is a sunnah. And you did not slack off in your fard. Versus someone who doesn't even pray sunnah at all. Now shaitan will try to whisper to him so that he misses his fard. And that he wastes his fard. So it serves as a protective barrier around your fara'id and your obligatory prayers. So we'll just mention quickly one thing about voluntary prayers before we wrap up and go upstairs for the Asr prayer, inshallah. And I believe this is something we did talk about before. And that is standing in prayer. We mentioned, of course, standing in prayer, if you recall, it was a rukn of salah. Meaning, if it's a fard prayer, you have no excuse. You have to stand up unless you have some really, really severe circumstances. Okay? If it's a fard prayer and you are able to stand up, your salah is not accepted unless you are standing up. You have to stand up. When it comes, however, to the nawafil, the voluntary prayers, it is really highly recommended that you stand up. Because it is much more rewarding. However, it is not mandatory. Meaning anybody can pray their sunnah prayers sitting down. No matter what, even whether they are old, whether they are young, whether they are sick or whether they are not sick, whether they have a broken leg or whether they don't have a broken leg. They can do their sunnah prayers sitting down, and this is according to all the scholars. However, you are missing out on a ton of reward. Because the Prophet ﷺ tells us whoever prays standing, that's better for him. And then whoever sits down, that's okay, but he only gets half the reward of the salah. And then whoever prays laying down, then he should get half the reward of the person who's sitting. So don't be lazy, stand up. Okay? Don't be lazy, stand up. Now, of course, if you have a valid excuse not to be able to stand up, inshallah, you will get the full reward as if you are standing up. So if you're someone with a broken leg, for example, and the doctor says you should not be standing up for salah, and you can't physically stand up even, and you're sitting down, inshallah, you will still get the full reward for the salah. It's not going to be half reward. So do your best to stand up. Okay? You should, in fact, be standing. All of you, all of us here should be standing up. We have no excuse. If a person chooses to sit down, it is sunnah, according to one of the hadith, to sit in a form called at-tarabbu'. At-tarabbu'. Because the Prophet, Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, I saw the Prophet ﷺ, one time he was sitting, praying his sunnah prayer in tarabbu'. What is tarabbu'? It's basically sitting cross-legged. How do I explain this? You guys know what I mean by cross-legged? Yeah, sitting down and you like your legs. And I can't. This thing is covering. Can someone demo? Yes, exactly. Cross-legged like this, right? This is cross-legged. Jazakallah khair. So this is the sunnah for a person who is praying while seated. This is how they should offer their prayer with tarabbu' if they are choosing to sit down. So actually, today is going to be a very short fiqh session. So that's all there is for the fiqh. So any questions about voluntary prayers for now? Yes? Sorry? 4:30. So in a few minutes, inshallah. So yeah, I'm wondering if should I start the seerah for like a minute or like just finish one slide and then go to salah? Okay, khalas. So we'll do something very quick, inshallah, in the seerah. We'll just quickly jump into it. So last week we talked about, of course, the incident of the change of the qibla and how that took place really, and Masjid Qiblatayn and all that stuff. So, of course, in Masjid al-Nabawi, it was built in a certain way. We mentioned previously in the lecture, the walls were such and such. They were built with bricks and stones and this and that, and the roof was partially covered with leaves, right? So, of course, previously the front of the the front of the masjid was covered, so that whoever's praying in the front, they would be covered from the sun. But then the qibla changed. So now the back is that's covered and the front is now exposed. But they chose to leave the back covered. So they covered the front, of course, a little bit, but they left the back covered still. Why? Because they chose to put that as a shelter for a certain group of people called Ahlul Suffah. Ahlul Suffah. Who are Ahlul Suffah? Ahlul Suffah are basically immigrants, muhajirun, people who came from, most of them from Mecca to Medina, but even some of them from other cities to Medina as well. But they were extremely, extremely poor. And remember we mentioned the brotherhood before, the mu'akha. So these people, I guess they didn't have someone who got paired with them. So they had literally no way to live, or like nowhere to live. So the masjid was their shelter. And this is why to this day we say all the masajid are shelters as well. Not a homeless shelter, but a shelter for believers whom we trust with the masjid. Of course, trust that they're going to use the masjid for its intended purpose. So there was a group of people who were very, 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 very poor. The only thing they owned was the clothing that was on them, and even their own clothing sometimes would not fully cover them. And sometimes their awras would even be exposed from how little of clothing that they had. And in many cases, they would not have anything to eat except for whatever people bring them in the masjid, whatever dates people give. Sometimes, someone like, Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah was actually one of Ahlul Suffah, very, very famous person. And he had several narrations where he would say, I would sometimes ask one of the richer Sahabi a question, and I would walk with him to his house and asking him a question. And he would say, I'm not asking him because I don't know the answer. I already know the answer to the question more than him. But I'm just hoping that by the time I get to his house, he invites me in for some food. So they were really, 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 really poor, and they were struggling. However, subhanAllah, it came with a flip side as well. They were extremely, extremely knowledgeable Muslims. And that comes logically. Someone who's sitting 24/7 in the masjid. They're attending all the Quran halaqas. They're attending all the lectures by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're always, always there. So what do you think will come out of them? This is how someone like Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu comes out, right? Someone who is known to be like the top. Nobody can compete with Abu Hurairah when it comes to hadith. How do you think he got so much knowledge? Because he spent so much time in the masjid gathering so much knowledge. And this is why the Sahaba even started noticing that these people have so much knowledge. And so some of them, they would start voluntarily leaving their houses and moving into the masjid. So they can be with Ahlul Sufa, so they can learn with them. And eventually, basically, the Ahlul Sufa, they became the first ever Islamic university. Because they were extremely, extremely knowledgeable, and they were amongst the most pious, and they were known to be memorizers of the Quran as well, and things like this. So these are Ahlul Sufa. And actually, it is only when Ahlul Sufa began dying that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu became worried. What's going to happen to the Quran? We need some way to preserve the Quran. Why? Because he was worried that the Quran is going to get slipped away from the Ummah when Ahlul Sufa all die. To show you once again how knowledgeable these people were. So we'll pause here, inshallah, and then we'll go upstairs, we'll pray, and then we'll come downstairs again. We'll wrap up whatever we have in the Seerah, and we'll be on our way, inshallah. So we spoke about Ahlul Sufa before we went upstairs for the Salah. Also, of the things that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ established after the Hijrah is a souq for the Medina, a marketplace for the Muslims in Medina. Now, at that point in time, before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came, there did used to exist marketplaces in Medina. And what are we about? Like marketplaces, like, like a plaza here today, right? Like you go to a certain plaza and like there's that store, this store, that store, right? So they used to have a marketplace, but mostly the Jewish people owned it, because they used to be the richer people and they used to be the more wealthier businessmen. And because it was among the Jewish grounds, unfortunately, there were many things happening in that souq that should not be happening. There was a lot of cheating. There was a lot of there's a lot of cheating. There's a lot of lying. There's a lot of fraud. A lot of use of interest. That's what usury up here is. Usury is like, use of interest, right? So many things were wrong with that marketplace, and therefore Prophet Muhammad ﷺ decided we need a marketplace for the Muslims. And so he went one day outside the Masjid al-Nabawi, and with his own feet he marked like a line bordering al-Masjid al-Nabawi, and he said to the Muslims that this is our souq from now on. This is our marketplace, and everything was fair game in the marketplace, except, of course, anything that was haram, and of course, any kind of cheating or lying. No taxes, no interest, nothing, no like trying to add and increase the prices of the items in the store, just so that you can get more money out of it through like interest or through fake taxes or something like that, right? So this was one of the economic improvements that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did for the Muslims. Also, towards early Medina, this was when the majority of the Islamic commandments came down. So most of the fara'id, ya safe, right? Most of the fara'id that we're practicing today, praying, fasting, zakah, and so on, almost all of them came down in the first year of Hijrah. Almost all of them came down, like fully established. Now, Salah, of course, we know it was established before, during an Isra and al-Mi'raj, right? However, at this point in time, it was taught to the Muslims the exact same way that we pray today. Meaning there was 2 rak'ahs of Fajr, 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr, 4 rak'ahs of Asr, and so on. Okay? So, Salah was fully established. Zakah as well. Okay? So, Zakah came towards the second year as well. Siyam as well came towards the second year. So, fasting, people actually used to fast the 10th of Muharram. which is still a Sunnah fasting day to this day, right? It's Sunnah for us to fast the 10th of Muharram. Back then, it was not Sunnah, it was Fard. They had to do it. But then, in the second year of Hijrah, it was downgraded. The 10th of Muharram became a Sunnah, and the month of Ramadan became Fard. And the same thing as well. First, it was for zakah. It was originally only zakatul fitr. You know, the zakat the zakatul fitr that you have to pay in the month of Ramadan. It was only that was obligated to the Muslims, and then eventually the main zakah was obligated as well. The zakatul mal. Every year you have to pay 2.5% of your savings and whatnot, right? So that was when this got obligated. Among the obligations that came down towards the Muslims is the obligation of, and this is, of course, always gets sensitive whenever we mention it, but that is the obligation of jihad. Performing jihad. Allah Azza wa Jal revealed verses in the Quran giving permission for the Muslims to fight back against their oppressors. Remember, from so far up till this point, the Muslims were persecuted, they were tortured, they were weak, they were not even allowed to fight back. Like in Mecca, when a Muslim sees another Muslim being tortured or being punished, they were not allowed to go and help them out because simply they weren't able to. Okay, it was crazy. The Muslims were very small in number, they were weak overall, and if any one of the Muslims, imagine, they tried to go and like kill Abu Lahab or kill Abu Jahl, okay? As soon as they do that, they're going to kill all of the Muslims right then and there because the Muslims are very weak right now. So right now, in Mecca, Allah Azza wa Jalla is revealing verses telling the Muslims, you know, be patient. This is what's going to happen to them in the day of judgment. This is how they're going to be punished in the hellfire. Be patient. This is the reward of the person who is patient. Be patient. You're going to be in Jannah. So it was verses telling the Muslims just be patient. Now it was starting to change the tone. Now it says permission has been granted for the Muslims who have been oppressed to go and fight against their oppressors because they were expelled out of their homes for no reason other than simply saying that Allah is my God. And then Allah Azza wa Jal explains, even because, you know, of course in the West, here in Canada, if you go and tell a non-Muslim jihad, they will tell you, oh, you know, jihad, astaghfirullah, you know, they want to say astaghfirullah, but like they'll tell you, yo, jihad, like what's going on, you know, and you guys already know what terms they start to label us as, right? And of course, and the beautiful thing, of course, is Allah Azza wa Jal explains what is jihad in the Quran. And Allah says, if it weren't for us allowing people to do jihad, corruption would be all over the place. Who would stand against the oppressor? Who would stand with the weak against the strong? Who would, you know, like, khalas, the wealthy people will remain wealthy, the corrupt people will remain corrupt, and they will corrupt the people around them, and the weak people will always remain weak if jihad was never allowed. So jihad is not just, oh, we want to go and fight in the name of Allah and we're going to fight and kill and shed blood. This is not what jihad is. Jihad is you are fighting for the sake of Allah for a reason. Like for example, we have the people in Gaza. You know, for the past several months, they've been fighting back, right? They've been fighting back. They're not fighting back. And of course, this is where the media loves to label, oh, look, October 7th, this and that, look at what they did. And of course, we say, no, you guys are being stupid. Because that's not the whole story. These guys have been expelled out of their own homes. Their money was stolen, their properties were stolen, their families were taken and arrested, and this and that. You want them to sit silent? You want them to sit like that and just accept everything that's coming to them without doing anything back? Why are you now surprised that they're trying to fight you back and resist you, and that you're trying to take you down and take back what's rightfully theirs? Right? So this is exactly what is jihad. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, of course, also mentions one of the wisdoms of jihad, that when these people are granted victory, what shall they do? They're not going to oppress people. They're not going to start changing things. They're going to aqamu salah. They're going to establish prayer. They're going to command people to give zakah. They're going to tell people to do that which is halal and to forbid people from doing that which is haram. Meaning they're restoring the peace on this earth. They're restoring the balance on this earth, the justice on this earth, right? So this is the whole point of jihad. And as soon as these commandments came down, specifically the one for jihad, the Muslims began their attack against the Quraysh. And of course, it wasn't a direct attack. I mean, they don't just gather an army and go and attack Mecca. It doesn't work that way. But they started indirectly attacking the Quraysh. How? by attacking the caravans of Quraysh. As we mentioned previously, Quraysh was a business tribe. They made their money by sending caravans to other cities, okay? Sometimes to Yemen, sometimes to Busra, sometimes to here and there, right? And they would buy and sell things and they would make money. So now the Muslims, they said, why don't we attack their caravans? And we try to capture whatever money we can from them in these caravans. So that began a series of attacks against the Quraysh. And of course, we're not going to really talk about the attacks today. We're going to probably talk about that next week, inshallah. But we should understand one concept very quickly, inshallah. And that is a terminology that we will start be using from now on. Something called a ghazwa and something called a sariyah. Okay? Sometimes you might hear these terms. They do not mean the same thing. Ghazwa is different from a sariyah. What is the difference? Ghazwa and a sariyah are similar in such that they are a military expedition, meaning there's an army going to fight another army and they have a mission to accomplish. Both of them, Ghazwa and Sariyah. However, there is a major difference between them. Ghazwa has the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in it. Sariyah does not. And of course, if Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is present, then automatically he's the leader. Nobody's going to be the leader when giving orders when Prophet ﷺ is there. So Ghazwa means Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is there, he's with the army, and he is leading the army. He's giving them commands. Whereas, and usually when he leaves with the army, he usually appoints someone to be the leader of Medina, because obviously in Medina he's the leader. He's the leader of the Muslims. So when he's absent in Medina, he puts someone in his place temporarily. So this is a ghazwa. A sariyah is very, very similar, except that Prophet ﷺ is not there. He stays in Medina. And he simply appoints one of the Sahaba to be the leader of that army. So he might say, okay, Zayd bin Haritha, you are the leader of this army. Abdul Rahman bin Auf, you are the leader now. Okay? So he would assign one of the Sahaba and he would give him like the leader role. But the Prophet ﷺ would not join them. So overall, we tend to see in the Seerah, there are many more sariyas than ghazwas. Okay? There's only around 19 ghazwas that Prophet Muhammad got involved in. And of course, ghazwas, we tend to have more details on them because obviously Prophet Muhammad is there. So we have a lot of details. And of course, the first major ghazwa, which is coming right around the corner, is Ghazwatu Badr. Ghazwatu Badr. It's called ghazwa because the Prophet was there. But we're going to mention a bunch of sariyas as well, where the Prophet was not there. Some of them were significant, some of them were nothing much happened. And even for the ghazwas, actually, the majority of the expeditions, the military expeditions, most of them were actually like, not that interesting, for the lack of a better word. Not much happened. An army would gather, they would try to attack the caravan. Either they would miss the caravan, so no battle would take place, or they would meet the caravan and something would happen and no fighting would take place, or just a few arrows here and there exchanged, nothing interesting happens. So we don't really get a lot of sariyas or ghazwas like the Ghazwatu Badr, where it's like an all-out war, or Ghazwatu Uhud, or Fath Makkah, right? Where like massive armies and like it's a massive, all-out kind of thing, right? So inshallah, next week we will start our discussion on the series of sariyas and ghazwas that started taking place in early Medina, that eventually led up to Ghazwatu Badr al-Kubra. Any questions? No questions? Yes? They were. So there are certain, very good question. So during war, there are certain guidelines which are given to the Muslims, which are taught to the Muslims by Allah Azza wa Jalla, and they are even in the Quran. There are many verses, you will find them in Surah At-Tawbah, in Surah An-Nisa, in Surah Muhammad, right? Many verses that teach you the etiquette of fighting. So you're not allowed to, for example, the ruling is 1 for 1, for example. If they kill one of you, you don't go kill 30 of them. Okay? There are certain rules when it comes to jihad, and generally speaking, if the opponent is, for example, Muslims are not allowed to harm any women or any children or any civilians, civilians being like people who don't know how to fight. It's haram for them to attack these people. And once again, of course, the Western media, they never talk about that. They only talk about this, this, and that, and look at this and look at that, right? It's also, for example, if a person surrenders, they surrender. You capture them, but you don't you don't subject them to torture or harm or punishment, or you treat them like animals, or you starve them, or things like this, right? So again, all of these guidelines are found in the Quran. This is not the time or the place to get into them. There's literally a fiqh for jihad, okay? And we're not going to talk about it in the fiqh section either, okay? But yes, just to sum it up, there is a certain number of guidelines. And subhanAllah, yani even look at the people of Gaza when they capture some of the enemy side, the hostages, right? The videos are out there. How do the hostages usually come out? Well fed. They have a very different perspective on the Muslims and on the Palestinians, right? And usually they're silenced so that they don't go on like, Western media and start telling them, oh, the Palestinians are actually good people and they're treating us well. They usually silence them. Why? Because they know they're being treated really well. You can honestly go YouTube it, videos, watch the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners in the enemy prison versus the enemy prisoners in the Palestinian prisons, and you can see from there how Islam really changes the way that everybody's treated. Um, so hopefully that answers that question. Yeah. Well, they killed civilians, but there has to be a reason why they did that. So, like you will not find, for example, يعني Palestinians shooting a random any rocket somewhere and telling you, oh, we're tunnels, right? Oh, there's tunnels there, that's why we're hitting it, right? No, they're hitting the enemy. So sometimes you might think they are quote unquote civilians, and of course that's what the Western media labels them as. But for the most part, many of these people are providing support to the military, either through their money, or by volunteering, by giving them food, or by giving them information, or things along these lines. Well, not necessarily. There is a certain point. As soon as, if you are a civilian and this is what your country is doing, and you are sitting in the middle of the battlefield, this is not where you sit. You go somewhere else. This is not the place for you to call yourself a civilian. Okay, and especially once again, the actions that they are doing is no longer constitutes a civilian. Okay, so same thing. For example, as Muslims, you're not allowed to kill women and children. However, if there is a woman on the enemy side and she's doing a lot of harm by spreading information, giving poison, okay, or we have cases even in Seerah where certain women were executed. Certain women were executed, enemy women, because she was caught poisoning, for example, the food of Prophet Muhammad. Okay, she's not carrying a sword, she's not fighting in the battlefield, but can you call her a civilian? So there's a fine line in terms of what constitutes a civilian and what constitutes someone who's aiding the army. Okay, so in that region, we can say almost the whole city, and it's a very small city, anyways. Almost the whole regime is aiding the army and the military and whatnot. Well, to massacre civilians, what's your evidence that they are massacring civilians? Because I did not read that in any news. This is a conversation we can take, me and you, inshallah, after this lecture. But besides that, I want to hear if there are any other questions. Yeah, but just to, again, as Muslims, if we have evidence, okay, just to kind of comment on that before I close it up. If we have evidence that any group, okay, is committing massacring civilians, we will always condemn that group. We will never, as Muslims, I have to say that you guys are wrong, whether I'm sympathetic with them or whether it's happening to them. However, we have to be fair in the way that we look at the whole situation. So if I'm going to condemn one group, I have to look at I have to study all of the facts. I cannot only read one statistic and be like, oh, how is it okay for them to do that? Okay, I have to read the whole story. And again, we can discuss this inshallah after the lecture, um, if you're interested to have that conversation, inshallah. Any other questions though? Okay. What are some names for voluntary prayers? Mr. Adam? Nafil? Tatawwa'. Very good. How are voluntary prayers beneficial for obligatory prayers? Like, how does it help obligatory prayers? Muniba, yeah. Fills in that gap. Very good. Fills in that gap in the obligatory prayers. What are some other benefits of voluntary prayers? Yes, in the back. Can you elaborate a little bit? Yani, brings you closer to Allah. Okay, but like, okay, there we go. There we go. Like, so earning the love of Allah, being raised in status, having increased good deeds, decreased bad deeds. What is the ruling on standing in voluntary prayers? Yes, in the back corner over there. Yeah. So it's allowed, but or sorry, so it's recommended to stand, right? But it's not mandatory. And if you choose to sit down, you only get half the reward. Who are Ahlu Suffah? Mr. Saif. Elaborate. Who were the poor people, bro? The poor. Yes, okay, yeah. The poor people who migrated and live in the back of the masjid. Hello, Suffah. Why did the Prophet Muhammad establish a new marketplace in Medina? Yes. Exactly, like lots of cheating, lying, and usury and interest and whatnot. Why did Allah Azza wa Jal obligate jihad for the Muslims? Uh, wait, was it? Oh, wait, please. Yes, Muhammad. So, to fight off the oppressors, justice, right? What is the difference between a ghazwa and a sariyah? Um, yes, Amiha. Very good. So, in the ghazwa, he is the leader of the army, and a sariyah, he's appointing a leader. So, inshallah, that is it for today. If you have questions, you can come and ask after.